VLR.
If spending money like water was the answer to our country's problems, we would have no problems now.
And it is another Wednesday night here on Vigilant Liberty Radio, which means that it is time for Modern Comments Radio. And just to make sure that there is not a war on women, I, your humble producer Taylor, am not going to take up any time. So here's Amy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Modern Comments Radio. That's right. It is the War on Women special, and I'd like to welcome to the program tonight Heather Boulware, who you can find on Twitter at @HBoulware. Good evening, Heather. How are you?
Hello. I'm
you
good. How are you guys?
I am good, and also joining us is Dave.
Hello.
Who gets to be the lone man on the panel as we rake him over the coals for being a woman-hating misogynist, according to feminists. So
wait. Wait. No. Now, if the producer is going to chime in,
okay.
Let's be honest here. The producer is a man too, but I was trying not to get involved in the war on women since I am a hateful, hurtful man. So
that is true, but you can feel free to chime in if you want to. It'll make for a more dynamic show.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe on this show I'll get in touch with my feminine side.
Be afraid.
Oh.
Be very afraid.
Well, one thing I would like to say, I will interrupt for a second because Liz Harrison has told me that I cannot talk Texas politics on Right War. It's amusing that I went to the VLR site and first saw an ad for Wendy Davis, go figure, and then saw an ad for Dan Patrick, who are on opposite sides of the party. I just find that really funny. All right, I'm shutting up now.
That's totally fine.
Well,
we'll have to talk about that on another edition. We are going to get started, though, and we are going to focus on two of the stories that have been big news this past week. And the first one, we're going to read a column, or part of a column, and discuss it, by AJ Delgado, who you can find on Twitter at Miss A. Delgado, M-I-S-S-A. Delgado. She wrote, and it was published May 19th, a column called Crying Rape. And I'm going to read just a few excerpts from it so that we can get an idea of what the column is about, because we're going to start talking about it. And it'll segue beautifully into our second topic of the evening. She begins, rape. Decades ago, women who were raped and reported it, particularly those raped by someone outside their race or social class, were often disbelieved and shamed. That is tragic. But how far the pendulum has swung the other direction. Now the term rape, or sexual assault, is thrown around almost effortlessly. Accusations easily made and lives easily ruined. First, the pendulum shift began with feminists pushing the notion that women claiming they were raped should always be believed and never questioned. Presumption of innocence, a foundation of our culture, suddenly went out the window. Consider how quickly the public tried and found guilty the Duke lacrosse boys. Ditto for a woman alleging sexual harassment. Watch the Designing Women episode concerning the Clarence Thomas Anita Hill controversy. The show's theme, only a sexist Neanderthal would question Hill. Then followed the loosened standards for arrest and rape accusations. Sure, district attorneys still required evidence of rape to prosecute, but police are not restricted by such to make a mere arrest, so smile for your life-ruining mugshot. Close on its heels came the broadening of the very definition of rape, a term on which there is now almost no consensus, thanks to the left's deliberate expansion of it. Prominent scholars and activists now even define rape as including any sexual activity in which the woman is not sober, claiming that consent is never truly given if one has had a few drinks. Admittedly, I am no scientist, but I am fairly certain that a statistically significant amount of sex, including very enjoyable sex, happens under the influence of alcohol. But by the liberal definition of my generation, I have been raped. Multiple times. No word from the left on whether men partaking in SUI, sex under the influence, are similarly raped by a sober woman, or, if both are SUI, they both raped each other. Logic, ever so inconvenient to the gender warriors, causes these questions to go unanswered. And we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Give me just a moment. There is, naturally, a pressing consequence of all this that few discuss: the impact on the lives of the accused. The left loves to paint a caricature, seen in countless films and shows, for example, the frat boys in American Horror Story Coven, of a smirking college male who deliberately drugs and rapes a girl. That undoubtedly is rape, and such a man, in quotes, deserves the worst the law and life can throw at him. But life is not so black and white, nor clear-cut, and those situations are far outweighed by murkier ones. Allow me to share a tale of my senior year in college. My friend Amy stumbled into my apartment on Saturday afternoon after a wild night. I'd left the club around 3 a.m. and had last seen Amy walking out with Steve, names changed, a guy she'd fancied for quite some time. She spilled all the details about their wild night as my roommate and I listened and laughed at the TMI portions. But then evening rolled around and Amy had not heard from Steve. Calls she placed went unreturned. She began to fret. Suddenly adjectives she'd used earlier to describe Steve, amazing, so cool, were turning into jerk, and why the hell hasn't he called back? By midnight, when she finally got a hold of him, only to learn he was blowing her off, and was later seen with another girl at the same club, she became a downright wreck. The following morning, Amy called me. You know, I've been thinking. I had a lot to drink the other night, right? I mean, you saw how drunk I was. I told Amy she actually wasn't very drunk, as we'd not been at the club long before she left with Steve. Amy insisted. No, trust me, I was really drunk. Like, I don't even remember going home with him. Now I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think he raped me. My phone nearly dropped. I told Amy to come over immediately. We talked it through. I was determined to support her if she had been violated in any way, even suggesting we go to the hospital to have her examined. But the more I spoke to her, the more it became clear that this was not a case of rape, but of regrettable sex. Amy felt scorned and used and hurt. Convincing herself she had been raped was a way of saving her dignity and avoiding the hurtful reality. For good reason, it is hard to forget Amy, a reminder to the extent some in our society remain skeptical of rape claims, women themselves bear a share of the blame. After all, for every legitimate actual rape claim, there may be another that was not, a girl who cried rape. Liberals scoff and dismiss the idea that women sometimes falsely claim rape or wrongly believe they were raped. One activist in Canada recently stated, people just don't lie about rape. Rape is a horror. It should be treated as seriously as its horror requires. Perhaps the left should stop diminishing it by creating and crying rape. Again, that was a column by A.J. Delgado, and she wrote it in National Review. And the reason I'm talking about this is because she took a lot of flack for it on Twitter and in the comments section, and one tweet that caught my eye described it as rape apologia. And when you read the entire column, and I read excerpts from it, I don't know how a reasonable person can walk away from that thinking it was rape apologia. And if you don't know what that term means, it means a written defense of one's opinions or conduct. And in no way, shape, or form was she trying to minimize or engage in apologetics for rape. She was merely calling for a sensible approach to the accusations of rape because it is such a serious crime. And I had an exchange with a feminist on Twitter, and it went something like this, and I'm going to read just a few of the tweets that we shared back and forth. The person, to spare her the humiliation that comes with being beyond ignorant, I won't read her handle.
You can read her handle. That's okay.
All right. Well, it's Sarah Yvonne at Sarah Yvonne. So, her Twitter handle is Sarah Yvonne, and she goes, major shout out to the brilliant Kay McDonough at Salon for her takedown of Miss A. Delgado's rape apologia in the National Review. And I replied, I didn't know advocating for justice and due process for those accused of serious crimes is apologia now. And she responded back to me, the accused are nearly always favored. Ms. A. Delgado neglects to note that only 3% are convicted. Many never face arrest. My response was, and how is reminding people that our justice system is predicated on innocent until proven guilty related to that or apologia? And the response was, she diminishes the acts of rape and sexual assault. That is all. That is apologia. Good day. And we'll notice those two words become a theme in the rest of the tweets. I responded that she did no such thing, and my response is, she did. Good day. And when I responded again, I got another tweet that ended with, good day. And it was clear that the conversation was over, and you can read the entire exchange, including screen caps, on my blog, moderncomments.wordpress.com. But the exchange was very eye-opening to me because it was basically, she said it was apologia, she wasn't willing to discuss the issue, and she dismissed me with good day. And why this became even more important after that shooting that happened around the University of Santa Barbara, because this notion of we are going to say this is rape and this is sexual assault, and anybody who disagrees with us is somehow apologizing for rape is insane. Heather, did you get a chance to read that column by A.J. Delgado?
Yeah, I had read it when kind of a stir. You know, everybody was, oh my God, how could she say this? And she had basically been saying things that others of us had been saying for a while. And so I read it, and then I tweeted it a few times, and then I too had some conversations with feminists. They're like, well, you're a rape apologist, you're making excuses, you're victim blaming. That's the other, I get that a lot. You're blaming the victim. You know, and it's ridiculous to me. I do not, rape seems to be the only crime where guilty is the way we're supposed to look at this. That, you know, men are guilty of a crime if no matter what you say, no matter what they do, even if they have compelling exonerating evidence, they're still guilty.
Well, she mentions this in an article. Look at the Duke lacrosse
and
player.
That's just it. I mean, they're dealing with them. Yeah, I mean, that entire case is a nightmare from the very beginning. And I mean, even after the attorney general, the prosecutor was not just disbarred, he was also found in contempt of court, is almost unheard of. And even after the attorney general said not only were the boys not guilty, they were innocent and no crime ever happened, feminists will still say that they were guilty because they had a party with strippers. I mean, I'm not. When did somehow a bunch of college kids drinking and having a party with strippers? When did that become rape? I mean, I don't even. It makes no sense.
It boggles the mind, but it's about.
But if it was about and had male strippers, it would be totally fine.
It would be totally fine. I mean, they were those Duke lacrosse players were condemned by the faculty before they even went to trial. The faculty issued a statement. Their lives were up just
faculty
in complete
before any of the facts of the case were even known. Yeah, I mean, they were condemned by the faculty and judged guilty before the facts were even known. About what happened and who was there. I mean, she couldn't even identify 60-something or 38 members of the lacrosse team, and she basically just picked 3 at random. One of the ones that she originally identified wasn't even at the party. So she had to go back and pick up.
And her story changed several times. And her first name was Crystal.
Well,
I can't recall.
Yeah, Crystal Mangum.
Yes, and
Mangum,
she is
Mangum. Yes,
and she is now in prison.
Yeah, she's now. for life, attempted murder. Or murder, I'm sorry, the guy died, so she murdered him. Originally, she was charged with attempted murder.
Yeah, and then he died, and she went to prison for murder. And you can go to my blog, and toward the end, I have a link to another story about Brian Banks. I don't have a lot of time to go into it now. It's a longer read, but go and read what happened to him. He was also accused of rape, and he spent several years in prison until he was exonerated. And the girl at the time who accused him of rape, recanted her story, but was afraid to make it public because she didn't want to have to pay back some money she got in a lawsuit against the school where she alleged that he raped her. His life was turned upside down. His mother sold his house and went into debt to pay the legal fees, and he went to prison. His life was just completely and utterly destroyed because of a false accusation of rape. And then we're told we're not supposed to take this seriously, and we're not supposed to say,
exactly.
Hey, maybe when someone is accused of rape, we should look into it, we should treat it seriously, but we have to make sure that due process and innocence is taken care of. And I don't think that's outrageous. I don't think that's apology.
Exactly.
I don't think that is victim blaming. It's not. It's not victim blaming. It's making sure that the people who are being accused have the right to the presumption of innocence until they are proven guilty. And the people do.
And the other problem is that you know, and I mean, there's like real life out here, and then there's what happens. Different issue, because a girl on a college campus can report not to the police, not to law enforcement, not to the district attorney's office. They report it to a college student committee that they've been raped, and then the student is stripped of all due process rights. He has no opportunity to confront his accuser. Even if he has exculpatory evidence, that's completely irrelevant. The committee decides what his punishment will be, and most often they're just expelled.
I think if I were confronted with that,
well, and the problem is, a lot of these kids, they just sign these, like these school contracts. They agree to these things, and they don't even have any idea what they're agreeing to.
Yeah, they probably have no clue what they're reading or getting into.
And they books. They don't have. They just start. Yeah.
I think if I were thrown in a situation like that, I'd say, this is a criminal matter. You either bring me up on charges with the police, or I get a lawyer, and I'm going to sue the what out of you, especially with a state university. That's not due process. Well, I wonder if anybody's ever tried that to sue those committees and say, this is not legal, this is not right. You either turn me over to the police and let this legal system take care of it, or
that have been filed recently. One against Columbia University. Yeah, one against Columbia, and another one against, I want to say, a smaller college in Arizona for this thing. And they're, evidently trying to get this constitutional problem. Is the Obama administration themselves has said that if colleges don't start taking sexual assault accusations more seriously, then they can't receive federal funding. They will get cut off from their federal funding. And of course, because it's the Obama administration,
we know what that means.
Is to be taken seriously. Yes. Now you have to understand. So in some of these colleges, like at Oberlin College, and I think at Harvard, and there's a couple others I've read about, it can be considered sexual assault if a male student acts a female student and she feels, even if he just accidentally touches her, that can be considered sexual assault. It is it's unbelievable. I have stuff from Harvard and their code of conduct and some other stuff. I'll tweet it later. That is just, it's skin crawling to look at these things. I've actually told moms before, look, if you're sending your son to college, written consent for every single sexual act that he intends to enter into with a girl. And I know it sounds utterly ridiculous, But first of all, it would stop a lot of, just sort of wild, we'll just do this because it's fun. It will also protect them later. Because there are cases pending in colleges now of girls that 6 months or a year later will come back after the boy has dumped them and say, he raped me multiple times.
See, and as a mom of boys, that is something...
Even if it was time.
Yeah, even if time has passed.
Yeah.
But see, as the mother of 3 boys, it is definitely my concern. And I'm hoping by the time they're in college, because they're all under the age of 8, now that the pendulum on this will have swung back to a more reasonable policy, but I have no cause to believe that it will. So what you said, it sounds ridiculous, but if you are a guy, the thing that my takeaway from the past week on Twitter and social media is basically don't look at and don't talk to a woman ever, or you will end up being accused of sexual assault. And if you do happen to want to have sex with a woman, get it in writing or on video that she is giving consent.
Exactly.
But of course,
yes.
Knowing feminists and knowing how they work, that consent won't be admissible.
Listen, I have read. You can read this. Yes, I'm not kidding. There's mindingthecampus.com and fire.org are 2 excellent sources for this kind of thing. They list everything. They have all of this stuff. Casey Johnson, what's his name, Stuart something Jr., I forget his name, have done amazing work with this false accusations of rape and due process clause. And both of these guys are liberal Obama voters and say this is absolutely what is going on college campuses today. But even they say, at some point that is what this will come to, is that, boys will have to they will have to have a written consent form for every single, kissing, we gave consent. Touching, we gave consent. Doing this, we gave consent. And you will literally have to initial or sign for each sexual act so that written consent is given and received. Because college girls right now can literally go and remove consent after the act. Even if they've consented, they can go back and say, well, I had a couple of drinks and he kind of pressured me and I felt like I didn't have a choice but to give consent. And she is believed and the accused he's done for.
Yeah, and that's the same thing
he gets expelled and that's it.
Well, two things. One, as Amy said, that's not going to be enough for the feminists. They'll say they were coerced into consent. They were forced to write down that they're doing this and the video is an act. You can always find a way to excuse that. The second thing, I know private universities are tough enough to crack, but has anybody challenged those boards? Because I know I would. I would say, no, see you in court. I'm getting a lawyer, and you're either going to sell this as a criminal case with evidence that she was raped, or you're going to owe me a lot of money.
Yeah, it'll be the Amy College of Liberal Arts.
Well, the boys from Duke University, the 3 accused, Colin Finnerty, Dave Evans, and Reed Seligman, they actually sued Duke University Hospital, the city of Durham, and the city of Durham, the police department in Durham. And from what I understand, they privately settled with Duke University, and one of the settlement things was one of the Duke settlement agreements was non-disclosure, so we don't know how much money they got or anything. But Duke University had to actually rewrite its policy on sexual assault and rape accusations. So at least something good did come of that.
Yeah, and that should be a default in any lawsuit that is brought against the college, that their written policy has to change. And it should be run by those organizations that you mentioned, FIRE and remind me of the other one?
It's mindingthecampus.com. It's a website which is part of legalinsurrection.com. So there's the College Fix. I think it's thecollegefix.com. And then it's mindingthecampus.com and FIRE, which is just FIRE.org.
I put those up in the chat room for anybody who wants to do some more research. I am I am familiar with Fire, more on issues of free speech and free thought on campus. But here's the other thing that
Yes.
I boggles my mind in one way, but then in another way, it's completely expected. The other thing is the same progressives who are classifying every instance of touching as rape or sexual assault are also the same ones who, from basically kindergarten on, want to inundate kids with sex ed and birth control and say that sex, and especially if they're progressive feminists, that casual sex is a good thing.
That's right. That's the other side of this, is they tell these girls that it is absolutely empowering for them to drink like boys and sleep around like boys and have sex like boys and, they said men, that they should be able to do anything and go anywhere, whatever. Then when girls do that, when they go out and indulge in hookup culture and they get drunk and they have these wild sexual, adventures with boys, they wake up the next morning, what have I done? My parents are going to kill me. It's not healthy. It's horribly unhealthy for these girls because they're getting them biologically, their feelings and their biology says this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. That's not society them that. That's them. I mean, that's a normal biological reaction. And, but again, feminists say, well, they should be able to act just like boys. But when they do, and then something happens, it's fault. It's the boys' fault. The girls are never, ever at fault. They didn't do anything wrong. They should be able to act however they want, whenever they want, and because they're girls. But if a boy acts that way, it's completely different, and they should be drugged. And
it brings me to mind situations of years before. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, sorry if I interrupted you, Heather. It just reminds me of a situation of decades before the Civil Rights Movement. A woman who accused a white woman who had accused a black man of rape, of just looking at her the wrong way. That man usually didn't make it to court. He ended up getting lynched. And I think this is a different kind of lynching with the guys that are even accused of looking at somebody the wrong way. You're guilty of sexual assault.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the second topic. This past week, around the University of California, Santa Barbara campus, a shooter by the name of Elliot Rogers killed 6 people and then himself, and injured, I believe it was 13 others.
Don't forget he stabbed 3 people and
in his
shot
apartment.
3 people or something like that.
And yeah, he stabbed 3 people. He killed 3 people by shooting them. I believe he shot and injured other people, and I think he hit 4 people with his car before he crashed his car, and the police found him.
He injured 13 people and killed 6. And of the 6 he killed, 2 were women and 4 were men.
Yes, and the reason we're going to talk about that is we're not going to talk so much about the shooting, but we're going to talk about something that came about because of it on Twitter, and that is the hashtag #YesAllWomen. And this sprung up because Elliot Rogers left behind a 7-minute video and a 140-page manifesto in which he talked about several things. He did profess a hatred of women because he said he had never been kissed, and he was 22 years old and that he was a virgin. He disliked other men and he disliked couples. I did not get a chance to read all of his manifesto, but from what I've read online from those who have read it, it is a rambling nightmare of just a bunch of disconnected thoughts. And people jumped on just a small portion of what his motive was. His frustration over not being able to get the girls he felt he was entitled to. He came from parents who were both affiliated with Hollywood. My understanding was his parents got divorced. His dad didn't have a lot of money because he put a lot of money into a documentary that kind of flopped. So he felt like he should be living this rich Hollywood lifestyle, and he wasn't. And he was frustrated over that. He was frustrated over the couples that he saw around him. He was frustrated by the fact that he didn't feel like he fit in anywhere because he was half white, half Chinese. And he went and he harmed these people. But the two things that came out of it were cries for gun control, which is not surprising. You could set your watch by it. And this hashtag. And Dave was talking about this notion of you look at a woman the wrong way, and nowadays it's sexual assault, and you're liable to be raked over the coals for it. And the Yes All Women hashtag, they said it was started because all women have been the victims of what they are calling some men who are jerks and abusive. And I take umbrage with the use of the term all women, and then they're trying to cover it by saying, well, not all men are jerks, but all women have been the victims of jerky men. No, just no. There are women who have legitimately been assaulted by men, but the notion that not all men are jerks, but all women are victims, that logically does not compute. That logically does not make sense, because to me, when you say all women are victims, but all men aren't, women are around men.
What I vote, right?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Taylor.
I have a question. Okay, so does that mean that I'm not the victim because I had my heart just completely trampled on when I was 20 with my first girlfriend? Or, whenever I had other relationships end by their choice, I'm not the victim they are, even though they were the ones who broke up with me?
I would say no, but the progressive feminist I would say let me rephrase that. That didn't come out right. The progressive feminist would probably say no because you're a man, and therefore you are by default at fault. I would say yes. It hurt.
By default at fault. That's great.
Yeah, at fault. At fault. Yes.
Yes. At fault. You are. And
I've had my heart broken by guys, but it was them being stupid. It wasn't them assaulting me or hurting me or somehow diminishing me. The relationships just didn't work. I am not a victim. It did not traumatize me. And the great thing about social media nowadays is you can catch up with these people on Facebook. And I have to tell you, I got lucky because they're all nuts and I wouldn't want to have anything to do with them now. So them breaking my heart when we were in high school and college was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Well, considering your husband is sitting right there, I would hope that you would say that.
Well, even if he wasn't, I would.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, she just kind of got stuck with me.
But I look back on it and go, I was upset over that. I cried about him, and now he's off rambling about X, Y, Z and all this other stuff. I'm glad that we didn't end up together. And yeah, it sucked at the time, but I never saw myself as a victim. I never thought that there was some sort of political points I could score out of that. It happened. It was life. It's been happening for eons before I existed. It'll happen to my kids, unfortunately, and it'll happen eons after we're all dead and buried. But this notion that...
Well, I mean, okay, for the idea that all men are jerks and all women are victims, like somehow we can't be jerks. Like women cannot victimize men.
Oh, all you have...
Like that never... I mean, it happens. I don't...
Some of the most nasty and vile interactions I've ever had, sorry ladies, were with other women. Other women...
Exactly.
From my experience, don't get me wrong, I have very good girlfriends, and I work with women and I love them. But also some of the worst grudge holders, the worst backbiters, the worst personal attacks have been from other women. Guys that I've known will get mad at you. They'll tell you they're mad at you. They'll move on and get over it. And I find that a refreshing change of pace. So I don't see guys as the enemy here, but this hashtag, you want to see how quickly women can turn ugly? Tweet something on that hashtag that questions their motives. And there are, I'm not going to cherry pick, but there are some legitimately awful stories on there. But a lot of those stories, including a tweet from the Twitter I mentioned earlier, Sarah Yvonne, about how she was lamenting the fact that in Snow White, before Snow White sings "Someday My Prince Will Come," that she was asked if the prince stole a kiss. Now, first of all, that movie is probably older than all of us, and probably older than most of us combined. I think that movie came out in
animated movie ever made.
Yeah, I think
1937.
It was 1937. I couldn't remember.
1937.
Yeah, so that movie came out.
Yeah.
It'll be almost 80 years ago, and we are still have feminists today who are freaking out about a line in an animated movie. And
yes,
I'm gonna just pull up the hashtag and just go through some of it because it is fascinating.
To further that, Galt's Girl and I have discussed this, that women are some of the most catty, horrible, just absolutely mind-bogglingly awful people to be around, because they will, they backstab each other. You can be friends and think that these people, these other women are going to keep your secrets and be nice to you. And as soon as you, do the wrong thing, they're all over ripping you to shreds. I've never seen men behave as bad do. And if anybody thinks I'm kidding, just turn on any Real Housewives show for 5 minutes and see how these women act.
You couldn't get me to watch that show for 5 seconds.
No, there's not enough money in the world. But I have to tell you that I went to the Yes All Women hashtag, and everything I'm seeing at the top of the feed
don't watch it.
is conservatives who are doing an expert job of pushing back.
Well,
I can't even pick out tweets because it's
there was one.
Is that the one
I saw, or several, but the one that specifically stuck out for me was this woman said that when she gets on an elevator and there's if she's on an elevator alone with a strange man, she's thinking exit strategies and she's terrified. Like, really?
Unless
you're in a building, unless he's like a super sketchy looking guy, I'm probably not gonna. I might be vigilant and aware of where he is and what he's doing, but I'm certainly not gonna be terrified.
I get on elevators all the time. I work in a building that is accessible to the public.
Could view.
I've never been afraid of being on an elevator with another man. And the thing is, if somebody would ever try something with me, I'm gonna knee him in the groin, and he is going to regret it for the rest of his life. And it's that simple. I don't have to work on an exit strategy because I know what I'm going to do. So I go about my day. And you mess with me, and you're going to be singing soprano for a while.
Yeah, I can tell you what my middle sister did to somebody who actually tried to have his way with her. He had his working parts arm, and she just grabbed and twisted and yanked, and he ended up in the hospital. So
yeah,
but see, the thing
Let me ask you guys something, because I'm kind of curious. What do y'all think the end game in these hashtags are? The end game for these people who are creating the hashtags?
I don't know if they've thought it all the way through. I think in some ways they're hoping to raise awareness.
They have this. Yeah, they have this amorphous idea that if we just all band together as a country and tell men to not rape, that all we need to do is teach you not to rape and everything will be fine. But they don't think that through, what that means and what the ramifications of that are.
No,
they don't. And it's incredibly, if you read somebody look at this, it's incredibly selfish. This isn't about other victims. This isn't about men being, objectified and turned into some sort of, other or whatever. It's it's about them and their feeling. If they just wouldn't make me feel badly or feel this way, what they want is validation, basically, that, they had this experience, they feel like this, they want someone to say, you have every right to feel that way. It's like therapy outlet. There really is no end game, because every time if you say, okay, we got here, this is where we are now, well, that's not far enough, we need to go farther.
No,
there is no end game. It's all about progress.
It's part of the trend.
Progressing the narrative, exactly. Dave, you were going to say?
It's part of the whole trend to turn women into men and men into eunuchs.
And that's a good way of putting it. But there was a piece that let me just make sure I get pronounce her name correctly. Molly Hemingway wrote on the Federalist, and she talks about the 10 most asinine things about yes all women, and number 7 just shows the lack of self-awareness. It conflicts with the message that the sexes are interchangeable. A wise scholar I know said she thought current rhetoric about taking back the night, slut walks, and the vagina monologues appealed to college-age women because it's basically the only game in town that recognizes women's vulnerability, albeit in a way that doesn't fully acknowledge what's going on. But it does seem almost Victorian. And then she links to a tweet by Dan McLaughlin, who is at Baseball Crank. If you were arguing for a traditional view of how men need to protect the weaker sex, it'd sound exactly like yes all women. So on one hand, you have them saying men and women are interchangeable, we're completely identical, there's nothing different. And on the other hand, they're saying men are evil perpetrators of all this misogyny against women, and women have to be protected because if a guy looks at her wrong, it's sexual assault. Heck, and take it with a grain of salt because it's Amanda Marcotte, and we all know she's nuttier than a pile of squirrel poo, but she said that...
Wait. Nuttier than what?
A pile of squirrel poo. You've never heard that before?
Yeah.
No.
She is.
I don't disagree, but wow. Anyway, what did our favorite feminists say?
Well, back I think it was in March or April, the high school student who was an idiot. I will completely admit that he broke the school rules when Miss America came to his school and he asked her to prom. And the school suspended him because they were specifically told not to do things like that, and he did it anyway. But she accused him of sexual harassment for asking her to prom, and it's been kind of floated out that if a guy asks a woman on a date, he might be guilty of sexual harassment. Asking a woman to go get coffee might be sexual harassment. When the whole of human interaction and intimate relationships has started with those, let's go out and let's do this, let's do a movie, let's go grab a cup of coffee, let's get a bite to eat. And now suddenly that could be sexual harassment because it might be unwanted. Our guys, I know, and this is... I'm going to say this, and then anybody who's in a relationship is going to roll their eyes, but are guys supposed to be mind readers? Are they supposed to know that a woman is not going to be interested in going out with them unless they ask her? And now they can't do that for fear of being told it's sexual harassment?
Right. So if you ask a woman out on a date, then if the woman says no, she feels like she can't say no. If you ask her, she has to say yes because she doesn't want to hurt your feelings or be socially unacceptable. Which victims, as if women cannot conceivably look at a guy and say, no, I don't want to go out with you. I mean, feminists strip women of all autonomy and free thought and free will, and it makes no sense. We cannot function without someone standing behind us, holding our hand so that we can be strong and say no. It's amazing to me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Taylor.
I was going to ask, because we're talking about, okay, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. Okay, how do we solve the problem?
Well, one of the things that we have
solve the problem of feminists?
Solve the problem of this idea that, okay, women are supposed to have their hand held and men can't ask them out.
Well, I mean, the only thing we can really do is what we're doing. We have to continually push back on Twitter, in articles. Women like me and AJ Delgado and Amy and everyone else needs to say, no, daughters aren't going to be victims. Our sons aren't going to be victims. We are going to change this narrative and this rhetoric, and we will no longer accept the premise that women are victims and men are perpetrators. This
and we have
premise
to,
is wrong. We're not, and we are going to start pushing back against that. That's the solution. That's all we can do, is say enough is enough. This stops now.
And something that goes hand in hand with that is reclaiming the language, because whoever controls the language controls the debate. And progressives are very, very good at controlling the language. They can take words and they can change what they mean. They can change the terminology they use to make the words fit their agenda, to make it appeal to that emotional side. And we have to push back against that, because that loss of language and that expanding the definition of rape so that very few people agree on what a consensus is anymore, that has to stop too. And that goes hand in hand with pushing back, because if we shut our mouths and let them run amok, yeah, maybe they'll make fools of themselves in a hashtag because it's a hashtag on Twitter, but eventually this stuff gains traction, and this stuff that's a hashtag today could become policy tomorrow. And we have to be careful in the language that we use. Not self-censoring, but we have to make sure that we are using the correct language to describe situations like that. Asking a girl to prom is not sexual harassment. Harassment is the repeated, unwanted advances on a woman, and usually it's related to her advancement or her job security. That's what the definition of sexual harassment started out as being. And now it's asking a woman on a date. It can't stand. We have to draw that line in the sand and say enough is enough and push back. And I'm not saying stoop to that level of what some of the progressives do, but be willing to take some of their tactics and turn it back on them, because they hate that. And when you do that, and when you fight them with facts and logic,
absolutely,
they flip out and they will call you names and they will attack you, or they will be dismissive of you. Just like that woman, Sarah Yvonne, who couldn't defend her assertion that AJ Delgado's article was rape apologia. And so when I tried to explain it and engage in a productive debate with her, she dismissed me with a good day and went about her merry way, complaining about how misogynistic Snow White is. It's just, that is the solution to this. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it has to be pushed back. And it's going to require conservative women stand up and say enough is enough, and that feminists don't speak for us. And one of the added bonuses of that is, like I said, tweet something about yes, all women that contradicts the narrative, and watch how your mentions fill up with people who go absolutely, pardon my language, batshit crazy because you dared to question them. It happened to me, and I was minimizing the problem, and I was too stupid to understand what it was all about, and yada yada yada. But you push back, and they get hoisted on their own petard, because it's never not happened where eventually a debate with a progressive turns into name-calling and the uttering of pejoratives. And then my favorite thing to do is retweet that and let the world see what this supposedly tolerant progressive says about somebody who happens to be a woman and happens to disagree with them.
You can see
that's
examples
exactly the point here, is that I mean, you need first of all, to do this, you need to have fairly thick skin and not take this personally, because they don't know you, they don't know anything about you. They read maybe 10 words and they make assumptions. So it's not about you, it's about their own insecurity and their own issues. So don't get overly emotional and get angry and upset about it. Just let it go. But you need to be able to, here's your thing about, you want all women, you say you're speaking for all women, you say that all women face these issues, blah, 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 then I'm coming along and telling you from a conservative viewpoint, this is not how I see things. This is my view, and you belittle me names, and this just shows this isn't about women, this is about you. This is about a narrative. This is about power and control and victimizing men. This is not about women. Because if it was, we could all do this. You want us all in victim categories, and conservative women are not real women.
Exactly.
So that's really the way you have to look at it.
Or we're self-hating women. Dave, you were going to say something. Do you want to get that in real quick?
Well, actually, I'm going to say something else here. Yeah, a lot of people think I brainwashed Amy. I was the one who kind of got her to convert to conservatism. And they think that because you're oppressed, that conservative women are oppressed and brainwashed because you think differently from them, and that's part of why they're so dismissive, is that they're enlightened and you're not. Like another was it about the same topic, that woman who said she was a thinker and leader and called you a brute and a follower?
Yes, it was on the same topic. Yes,
and told you to go to your fake god.
Yeah, it was on. It was on in the wake of the shooting. It was about gun control, and yes, I was a brute, and I was told to go to my fake god, and I don't even know what that was supposed to mean, because it made no sense to me. But she didn't like the fact that I like, that's supposed to make me feel bad, because I think, I know what it was. She had sent out a tweet, and I don't think it was to you, Heather. It may have been about how she didn't want guns in public because her 5-year-old might go up and grab a stranger's gun and shoot people.
Yes, I had that.
Do you remember that now?
The whole story was, she was basically like, well, the whole story is this. She was in a grocery store in Arizona. Her 5-year-old was strapped in a shopping cart, and the woman in front of her child had a pink on the back of her pants, and she bent over in front of her child, and her daughter reached down from the cart and pulled the gun out of the woman's waistband. The woman didn't notice, and the mom had to run around the cart and grab the gun from the child before the child shot. That was the story we're supposed to believe, and all of this is so that nobody should be able to carry guns in public. So there you go.
Well, so there's the background. And I think I chimed in because my kids are 7, almost 5, and 1. And they will grab a candy bar. They will grab a toy off the shelf because they're kids. But never have my kids gone up to somebody and grabbed something off their person, even when they were in the shopping cart. And I'm curious because maybe my kids are abnormally tall for their age, so my 7-year-old and my 5-year-old don't go in carts anymore and they haven't for a while because they've been so big, they've been so tall. So why is a 5-year-old still in a shopping cart? Was one of the questions that I had, but we'll leave that aside for now.
Hey! I still rode in the shopping cart when I was 5.
Okay, well, fair enough, but to be fair, they do have those little carts that have the toy cars attached to them.
Yes.
So, occasionally that's a treat, especially for my 4-year-old.
The carts and an 18-year-old daughter. Yes, the other day, my daughter and I went to Target.
I don't understand at all.
Honestly, I have 3 kids. They were all at one time 5 years old. They would never have walked up to a stranger and just pulled something off their body like that. I mean, I can't even imagine that any one of them would have done that. I mean, get that close to a stranger in the grocery store and pulled something out of their pants. I mean, I can't even picture that.
And I'm trying to imagine.
I can see them getting a candy bar. Yeah, like a candy bar or a magazine in the checkout line, but grabbing a gun out of someone's pants.
And how does the physics of that even work?
Pants? And why would a gun own Right.
But, yeah, so...
I mean, guns aren't exactly light.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I am going to interrupt for a second because we do have just a few minutes left. So, Heather, where can we find you on Twitter outside of trolling hashtags?
I am at... Shush. I am at Boulware, BOULWARE.
And Amy, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Modern Comments and at my blog moderncomments.wordpress.com. realraw.com, and I occasionally contribute to Real Raw Right, which is really hard for me to say.
Realraw.us.
.us. Thank you very much, because I trip over the R's. But no, I want to thank Heather for being on the program this evening. As usual, the hour goes so fast and we have so much to talk about that we could probably talk for another 30 minutes. But coming up next is the Right War with Taylor and Liz, where Taylor will hopefully keep his promise not to discuss Texas politics. And he got it out of his at the beginning of my program. And you can stick around for that. Or today is Wednesday. My days are all thrown off because of the holiday. Coming up next is the Right War. On Fridays, they have the Conservative Feminist Show. Saturdays, we have the Saturday Night Cigar Lounge. Sundays is next. Mondays is their finest hour. And Tuesdays is the Roundtable of Extreme Liberty.
And Thursdays is America Our Way with Dustin Hoyt.
America Our Way with Dustin Hoyt. I will
does
remember
a
to add
really
that to
good job. You should listen to that show.
Yes, tune in for Dustin Hoyt on America Our Way. And if you have any questions or comments, you can always tweet me at Modern Comments. Send me an email at moderncomments@yahoo.com. And until next week, this is Amy for Modern Comments Radio, thanking Dave, my guest, and Heather, my guest. And we'll see you live again next week on Vigilant Liberty Radio. Have a lovely evening, everybody.
And this is your producer,
Bye,
Taylor,
everyone.
saying, "Come on, Amy, don't I get a thank you?"
I'm sorry, yes, and my esteemed producer, Taylor, who you can find on Twitter at
EYE Desert Blog. That's EYE Desert Blog. Good night, folks.
Good night. Have a lovely evening.
This show is copyright by VLR Media. All opinions of panelists and guests are their own and may not reflect the opinion of VLR Media, the host, or anyone else.